Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with a CMC of 5 to our Momir Vig Cube. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Here we are again with another installment of our Momir Vig Cube series. If you are new to this series or just need a refresher, you can search the description below for the link to the introduction to MTG Burgeoning's Momir Vig Cube. Additionally, you can click the link to Cube Cobra and see the entire contents of the cube as it stands right now. So without getting into too much more side babble, let's get to the next 20 creature cards with CMC of 5 that are going into this Momir Vig Cube. Our first card today, Balefire Liege. 2/4. Other red creatures we control get +1/+1. Other white creatures we control get +1/+1. Whenever we play a red spell, this will deal 3 damage to target player, and whenever we play a white spell, we gain 3 life. Now, of course, we can't pick the colored spells, we can't pick the colored creatures that we summon from the Momir Vig Cube. However, we have a pretty good chance of at least triggering Balefire Liege once or twice as long as we can keep it on the battlefield. Additionally, being able to lightning bolt a player or gaining 3 life ourselves in a format where you only begin with 24 life, Balefire Liege could be a very valuable card to summon to your side of the battlefield. Next card up, and it is an artifact creature. It is an artifact elephant. It is the Bastion Mastodon. 4/5, you can pay a white mana and it gains vigilance until end of turn. So MTG BC, make sure you got some planes in that basic land deck. Next we have Bellowing Tangleworm. 4/4 Intimidate, which means this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it. This is like a color specific version of Fear. And Bellowing Tangleworm gives other green creatures we control Intimidate in a format where combat reigns supreme. Giving any of your creatures any form of evasion could go a long way to clinching victory. Alright, next up, card number 4. Back to another artifact creature. We have the Blade Gryph Prototype. It's a 3/2 flyer with bad camera. There we go. It's a 3/2 flyer that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we can destroy target non-land permanent of that player's choice that one of your opponents controls. So remember, this Momir Vig Cube that we are creating is being created for the purposes of a multiplayer format. So having a card like Blade Gryph Prototype could be very, very important for any potential, let's say, political machinations that may be needed to remove a problematic creature. So you send Blade Gryph Prototype into combat at one of your opponents. It deals combat damage to them because it has evasion, so it may be difficult to block. Once that happens, that player gets to pick a non-land permanent of one of our opponents, and then we destroy it. So even without the purposes of any political gains, we can still really set back our opponent's the board development of our opponent's creatures just by having Blade Gryph Prototype connect with some combat damage. All right, next up we have, it's an oldie, but it is one of my all-time favorites, and you'll know it's one of my favorites just based on the condition of the card. We have Blinding Angel, 3/2 white for a 2/4 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player skips their next combat phase. This could be absolutely devastating if a player summons a copy of this to the battlefield, especially if they can't block it, because the only way you're going to get damage through, most likely, is going to be through combat. So if you take away an opponent's ability to attack, you most likely take away their ability to have anything to do in that game. Blinding Angel is not a nice card, particularly in a format like Momir Vig. All right, we are at the 1/4 mark of these 20 cards, And we're going to continue with the Blood Baron of Viscopa, 4/4 lifelink, protection from white and protection from black. Again, in a format where combat is key, protection to any creatures is favorable, is preferable. It's just aces. Let's just put it that way. That's what we're looking to do. As long as we have 30 or more life and an opponent has 10 or less life, Blood Baron of Viscopa will get +6/+6 and has flying. That may be a bit of a challenge because starting life totals is 24. So if you're lucky enough to get the Blood Baron out onto the battlefield and not lose too much life, and an opponent might be taking a lot of life, it's going to take a little bit of work to have that last ability activate to get the +6/+6 and flying. But the 4/4 lifelink with the double protection, that is highly coveted in this cube. All right, next up we have creature number 7, and it is Bloodgift Demon, a 5/4 flyer. At the beginning of our upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. So more likely than not, we are going to be the ones paying a life to get a card into our hand. Again, having lands in our hand are going to be paramount because you cannot summon a creature from the Momir Vig Cube without discarding a land card from your hand. And of course, if an opponent gets down to some dangerously potential lethal loss of life, we can always target that player to put a card in their hand and lose 1 life. All right, next creature we have, it is the Blood Host, a 3/3 vampire. We can pay 1 and a black. We can sacrifice another creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Host and gain 2 life. This creature could cause a lot of combat headaches for our opponents, particularly if we're chump blocking and just sacrificing them to make Blood Host bigger and to gain life. Again, MTG BC, make sure you're paying attention to the activated ability. It will require swamps, so make sure your basic land deck has got some swamps included. Next up, creature number 9, we have Body of Knowledge. It is an avatar whose power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in our hand. We have no maximum hand size. Whenever Body of Knowledge is dealt damage, we draw that many cards. So there's a few different points to talk about with Body of Knowledge. Now, it is in the 5 spot, so at that point in time in a game, there probably are not going to be many cards in our hands, if any at all. So if you end up discarding your last card to summon a CMC spell of 5 from the cube and you hit Body of Knowledge, it's going to die instantly, and that would be quite a shame. On the other side of the coin, however, if we could keep it alive, it would be an excellent chump blocker for any opponents that decide to send a big in at us. If a big old creature's coming our way, and the opponent willingly does so, then we throw Body of Knowledge in front of it, draw a ton of lands, and start summoning those creature spells. So Body of Knowledge is one of those borderline creatures where it could be helpful or it could be disastrous. It is a point that we continue to highlight in the construction of this cube, that not every creature included in it is going to be super helpful. All right, reaching the halfway point of this video, we have Challenger Troll. It is a 6/5 that reads, each creature we control with power 4 or greater cannot be blocked by more than 1 creature. If we can string together a certain number of spells where we can get some big old tramplers out there, and we have Challenger Troll on our side of the battlefield, that will pretty much be a lock for us to win the game, because those big old tramplers will never die in combat because they can only be blocked by 1 creature. And if they're big and tramply with a power 4 or greater, we will like our chances much more than not having Challenger Troll out there on the battlefield. All right, the first card of the second half, it is a mono red card. It is Charging Tuscadon, a 4/4 trampler. Look at that. Right after Challenger Troll, we get one of the creatures we were talking about. If Charging Tuscadon would deal combat damage to a player, it deals double that damage to that player instead. So this could be a very, very devastating card, particularly if we can land this in the 5 spot and the battlefield is just rife with creatures with low toughness or low numbers of creatures at all. Charging Tuscadon could make very quick work of the life totals of our opponents. Speaking of putting our opponents on a potential clock, we have the Clackbridge Troll. 8/8 trample haste. When it ETBs, target opponent creates 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on our turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, we tap Clackbridge Troll, we gain 3 life, and we draw a card. So this is going to really put our opponents in a bind. Do they allow us to pick someone to attack with an 8/8 trampler? Or do they sacrifice one of their highly coveted and needed creatures to tap this down, letting us gain 3 life, which is 1/8 of our starting life total, and put another land in our hand? Clackbridge Troll may be one of the best 5-drops in the entire cube. Next up, we're going back to our artifact creatures with the Clockwork Vorak. It has trample, and it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you remove a +1/+1 counter from it at the end of combat. You can tap Clockwork Vorak to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Under the most favorable of circumstances, we can summon this creature to the side of our battlefield and just keep tapping it to put +1/+1 counters on it until we can get a creature that's so big we can send it into combat and pretty much one-shot an opponent. All right, next up we have Coercive Recruiter, a 4/3. When it ETBs or another pirate ETBs under our control, we gain control of target creature until end of turn. We untap it, and until end of turn, it has haste and becomes a pirate in addition to its other types. Now, there are pirates sprinkled throughout the cube, so if you're lucky enough to summon Coercive Recruiter and an additional pirate sometime thereafter in the game, kudos to you for leveling the battlefield in your favor. Even with Coercive Recruiter coming down by itself, you still get to pick the best creature that's on the battlefield, bring it over to your side for a turn, and cause some havoc. All right, creature number 15 in this video, and it is a doozy. It is Conifer Worm. It's a 4/4 trampler where you can pay 3 and a green, and if you do, it gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of snow permanents you control. Again, MTG BC. Make sure you are filling your basic land deck with snow lands, because if you drop this down at the 5 spot and then you untap and you play another land the next turn, let's just say you have all snow lands, you got 6 snow lands, you're going to pay 3 and a green, and you're going to give this bad boy +7/+7, send it into combat, and that's only assuming that the only snow permanents you have are your 6 lands and the Conifer Worm itself. An 11/11 trampler on turn 6, that seems like it's going to be a very strong play in this type of format, but you got to make sure you have those snow-covered lands included in your deck. All right, we reached the 3/4 mark. We've got 5 creatures left to talk about today, and the next one, it is another mono white card. It is Constable of the Realm, a 3/3 giant soldier with Renown 2. That means whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, if it isn't already renowned, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes renowned. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Constable of the Realm, we exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent until Constable of the Realm leaves the battlefield. However, we need to modify that last wall of text, because all of the creatures that are summoned to the battlefield from the Momir Vig Cube are token copies of the real creature. And whenever a token leaves the battlefield, it ceases to exist. So for the purposes of this Momir Vig Cube, Constable of the Realm reads, whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Constable of the Realm, exile target creature. That's it. Can you imagine if you can string together additional ways to put +1/+1 counters on Constable of the Realm, thereby nullifying every single potential threat under our opponent's control that's out there on the battlefield? Ooh, baby, Constable of the Realm. All right, creature number 17. We are going another mono black, and we are talking about Creekwood Ghoul. 3/3. Tap any combination of Golgari mana, any combination of 2 Golgari mana, and we exile target card from a graveyard. Exile target card in a graveyard from the game, and we gain 1 life. The only cards that will be in graveyards will be lands. However, in a format that's combat driven, where you're only starting with 24 life, Tapping a couple of mana to exiling one of those lands to gain a life may be a lot more valuable than it seems, particularly when you consider that the longer the game goes, the more valuable that life total becomes. Alright, next creature we have, it is Crested Herdcaller. 3/3 Trampler. When it ETBs, create a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with Trample. Again, since this is Momir Vig, we can only summon one creature to the battlefield per turn. Any creatures that can create additional creatures are highly coveted and extremely valuable. So to invest 5 mana to get 2 3/3 Tramplers is an extremely fortuitous investment. All right, creature 19. We are going to talk about Cursed Monstrosity, a 4/3 with flying. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability, we sacrifice it unless we discard a land card from our hand. Again, with no instant or sorcery spells or any planeswalkers included in this cube, the only abilities that can potentially target Cursed Monstrosity will be enter the battlefield or activated abilities. There are some of those littered throughout the cube. However, a 4/3 for flying, that's not going to be too bad. However, again, like we said earlier in this video, not every creature is going to be super useful or overpowered. And here we come to creature number 20 of this video as the last of our 5 CMC creatures for today. It is the Custody Lich. 4/2, when it ETBs, you become the Monarch, which means if you are the Monarch at the beginning of your end step, you draw a valuable card. Remember, those lands help to summon your creatures, and those lands must be discarded each time you do so. So any way we can get those lands into our hand to get more resources than our opponents, the better off we have of trying to win that game. Whenever we become the Monarch, target player sacrifices a creature. So for the purposes of summoning a copy of Custody Lich to the battlefield, we become the Monarch. We're going to draw a card at the beginning of our end step, and we're going to have a player sacrifice a creature. Very, very powerful. Not granted, no evasion, nothing else special. However, card advantage and battlefield advantage, sometimes those two advantages are a lot more important than evasion on a creature, even in a format that's driven by combat. And there you have it, MTG BC. We are moving step by step in filling up our Momir Vig Cube. Let me know some of your highlights in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.